Good evening, everyone, and welcome to 15 Things You May Not Know About Grief, presented by Stephanie Arian, Clinical Manager at the Cancer Wellness Center. Before we get started, I would like to share a little bit more about the Cancer Wellness Center and our free programs and services. The center was founded in 1989, is a nonprofit organization with the mission to help anyone touched by cancer find a way forward. Each year, our free counseling services, support groups, health and nutrition programs serve over 2,000 community members of all ages and backgrounds. People with cancer, family members, friends, and caregivers all come to us to connect and cope. Our services, which are both virtual and in person, include education programs like the one this evening, wellness classes like yoga, meditation, nutrition, and more that provide a holistic approach to healthy living, and support services including counseling for individuals, families, couples, and those bereaved, as well as support groups that are designed to help our participants manage the mental and emotional impact of cancer. If you would like to learn more about the center and connect to our free programs and services, please visit cancerwellness.org, and the link will be included in the chat. Thank you, and I would now like to welcome Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Savina. Hi, everyone, and welcome. As Savina mentioned, my name is Stephanie Aaron. I am the bereavement coordinator and clinical manager here at Cancer Wellness Center. And so I thank you all for coming here today and for joining us as it is dark out and joining us via Zoom, which I know both are not easy to do. So today's presentation is called 15 Things You May Not Know About Grief, and is based on insights both from working with many individuals navigating loss, as well as reflections from other personal and professional experiences. And before we dive in, I want to invite you to take a moment to reflect and have a couple of things to consider. So I know everyone here today is coming for different reasons. So first and foremost, what brought you to this program? And, think about, is this a loss that you experienced yourself? Are you here because maybe you're looking to support a friend? Maybe it's a loss that you're anticipating. So I recognize that not everyone here today is coming for the same reason, but I do want to note that as we're talking, I'll be talking to you as though you have already lost a loved one, but no, of course, the information is applicable, to whatever your situation is. So think about, who are we grieving? How long has it been since that loss? Are you in your year of firsts? Are you further out? And, I want to acknowledge that grief is so deeply personal. And while some of what we're talking about today may resonate with you, maybe all of it, other parts may not, and that's okay. So, there's no right way to grieve. You'll hear me say that a lot. But navigating a loss can feel really, really isolating. And so my hope and goal today is that by joining us, you might be able to connect with some of the things that I'm talking about, hopefully feel a little less alone, and maybe even come away with some new coping tools as well. Well, I like to get started with a gentle exercise. I want you to take a moment and think about the face that you have shown others since your loss. Think about, who is that person? Is it someone who is managing? Is it someone who is busy? Is it someone who is okay? Maybe it's someone who says, I'm strong, I can do this. What does that outward face look like? As you're thinking about that, consider, what's behind the mask. Are you the same person? Maybe so. Sometimes people, it's the same. But think about, are there parts that you don't show other people? Grief often can ask us to hide parts of ourselves from the world, as you're carrying something that's invisible. And, these really tough emotions can feel hard to carry. But this exercise here, as we get started, is about honoring both the face we show to the world and the invisible truth that we take with us every single day. So what are the 15 things? Number one, as I mentioned, you'll hear me say this a lot, there is no normal in grief. Many people have heard of the 5 stages of grief, but we know now that grief is not linear. So it doesn't follow a timeline or a checklist as easy, or maybe you might wish that it did. But some people experience all of those stages. Some people experience 1 or 2 of them. Maybe you're experiencing them, but not in any order. You go back and forth. Just know that, there are so many more experiences to grief outside of that. And it can get really easy to start to think, I should be feeling better by now. But, the truth is there's no shoulds with grief. You can't measure your grief against others. It is so shaped by your previous experiences in life. So when I think about grief, I think about the impact that your relationships, your history, your personality, other life circumstances, those are all things that are come into how you grieve and kind of impact what that's like for you. So doing your best not to compare yourself to others and know that you're doing the best you can is so important. So there's no normal in grief. Number 2, grief impacts your mind and your body. So grief, it's not just something we feel, right? I think for a lot of people, we think of it as this emotional thing, but it really is so physical. It is cognitive, it's behavioral, and emotional. Let's take a look at some of those a little more closely. There can be so many different kinds of physical reactions to grief. You might feel exhausted, forgetful. You might have, true physical aches and pains. Grief can impact your immune system. So you might notice you're getting sick more often. You can have like numbness or tingling sometimes. And then it impacts your appetite, your sleep, your energy. So truly, it can have such a physical response for some people. And then there's cognitive reactions to grief. These are common responses to loss. In an attempt to process what's happening, you might find that your mind is perseverating on certain things. You might have that disbelief. You might worry more than usual or have some painful memories. This is all really a part of your body and your brain working really hard to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. To have someone here 1 second and not the next, it is really beyond our understanding of how the world works. And so all of these are very common with the grief experience. Behavioral reactions to grief. Some of these might look like withdrawing, retreating, engaging in social interactions in a different way. It might be kind of impacting your motivation to do things. Sometimes like brushing your teeth becomes a lot more difficult to do. So having different behaviors and maybe even like choosing different kinds of activities or choosing not to do activities can be impacted from your grief. And lastly, the emotional reactions to grief. I think that's, as I mentioned, something a little bit more commonly associated with grief, but there's really such a wide range. It's not just sadness, of course. There's anger, there's resentment, there's fear, shame, or guilt sometimes. And sometimes there's relief too. I know that can feel strange to say sometimes, but there are so many different emotions that are associated with grief that can really impact your mind and your body. Number three, grief can shake your core beliefs and assumptions about the world. Loss often changes how we think about how the world works, and this can look a couple different ways. So you might find yourself questioning your faith or your sense of safety. Maybe it's really changed the way you think about like what's fair in the world. And this is really all part of the grief process. It's okay to feel uncertain or angry and think about what beliefs or values or assumptions you may have changed or may have been questioning since your loss. And as we think about them, you may even start to ask yourself some really big existential questions, which can feel scary, it can feel unsettling, it can be tiring, but all of this is part of how we start to make meaning again. But important to know that grief really can shake your core beliefs and assumptions about the world. Number four, PTSD may complicate grief. So some losses are traumatic. If you've experienced a sudden loss or a particularly distressing loss, you may start to notice some symptoms like flashbacks or nightmares or persistent anxiety. Sometimes these will come in spurts and aren't too intrusive, and that can be okay. But it can also start to be more present. It can start to change your eating or sleeping patterns. It can lead to risky behaviors or maladaptive behaviors. Um, Maybe something like using like drugs or alcohol to cope. And if any of this sounds familiar, please know that professional support and sometimes medication can be really important to help interrupt these patterns and to help you get through some of these experiences. So if any of the things you're noticing in yourself are kind of what's on the screen or what I was just mentioning, please reach out for support. We are happy to always provide extra referrals to folks, but when we're talking about safety, reaching out to those emergency services, 911, when PTSD complicates grief is really important. Number five, grieving has gendered stereotypes. So I always like to talk about gender when I talk about grief because it is really ever present in both research and literature and society. And I think society often places expectations on how we should grieve based on gender. Some people are encouraged to talk and cry, others maybe expected to stay strong or silent. And it can be helpful to know that people grieve differently. Absolutely. And maybe you are looking at this and feel like that fits and is familiar, and maybe that's comforting and that's great. But it is also important to know that grief does not follow rules. And so it can be really, really hard if you don't find yourself kind of fitting into categories that you may see in literature or that other people may have kind of in their expectations for you. And so knowing that whoever you are, however you identify, maybe you don't even see that in your gender here or in yourself. However you grieve, whether through words, action, solitude, irrespective of gender, it's all valid. Number six, there will be secondary losses. So grief isn't just about the person who died, right? It's also about the ripple effects. It's about the roles they've played, the routines you may have shared, and the dreams that you held together. Secondary losses is something that I think like makes sense when you think about the death of a person, but it's so hard to know just how impactful all those losses are until you're going through it. And they can be just as painful, and you grieve them too. So it's really important to acknowledge them and to know that these losses compound. And so secondary losses absolutely matter and will be ever present in that grieving process. 7, not everyone knows what to say. Um, Not everyone knows what to say, and frankly, some people can say some really stupid things. You may have heard some things that felt dismissive or hurtful, and I recognize that most of the time, hopefully, they are well-intentioned, but it can still hurt. People often don't know what to say, and so you might have to let them know that what they were saying wasn't helpful. You might, have to set that boundary for yourself and tell them that that's actually not how you're feeling, or, that actually, doesn't resonate with me or isn't helpful to hear. It's really hard to find the energy to tell other people in these difficult conversations, that that didn't quite sit right with you, but it is okay to do that. And often it's what's needed. And most people, when they're there and they're well-intentioned, they appreciate the guidance. So grief can be isolating enough, but communication can help bridge that gap. So especially when not everyone knows what to say. Number 8, grief changes relationships. It is normal for relationships to change when you're grieving. And sometimes that's temporary, but some relationships may grow stronger after a loss if someone's able to show up and be there for you. Others may fade or shift, kind of depending on how that person is able to be there, and what's going on for them. This can be really painful, but it is also part of the process. People grieve differently, and sometimes that means growing apart for a little bit. Unfortunately, people may be uncomfortable with grief and loss. Sometimes people will avoid others or not check in as often. A lot of times they don't even recognize that they're doing it. But new connections can also emerge through the grieving process. People who understand, who get it, who maybe have been through something like this before, um, might be able to be there for you in a way that others can't, and you can form new bonds through that too. It's not always permanent, but grief can change relationships. And it's okay to laugh when you are grieving. Um, this is a very important one for me. For some people, I know that laughter can feel strange when we're thinking about grief, but it's not disloyal. It's not, minimizing to your pain or loss. It's kind of that both and. It's good for us. It stimulates the immune system. It helps relieve pressure and anxiety, and can be a big part of self-care. So thinking about laughing, when possible, it's a release, it's healing. So give yourself permission to laugh if, even if it catches you off guard. It can be helpful sometimes to even like plan or do things that might intentionally, give you the opportunity to laugh, when you're feeling up for it. And I know that can feel weird at first or rehearsed, but after some time, it can come more naturally. So it's okay to laugh when you're grieving. Number 10, the first milestones are tough. Anniversaries, birthdays, holidays, these are all incredibly hard. And I also like to mention that not all milestones will happen in that first year. It can take longer than a year to experience all the firsts. There's those that you can anticipate, like those, but there are a lot that maybe you can't. The first time you hear a song on a radio or go to a certain place that reminds you of them, right? There's a lot of different kinds of milestones and firsts. Um, but for those that we think about, like birthdays, anniversaries, anticipation can be worse than the day or milestone itself sometimes. A lot of people find that, after all of that anticipation and worry, the day is a little bit more manageable than they thought it might be. So you might consider creating a new tradition or finding ways to honor your loved one on those days. But remind yourself what is within your control and what isn't, and know that whatever you feel that day, um, if things go according to plan or not, just try to be like gentle with yourself and gentle with the expectations for that day. It can feel like pressure sometimes to feel like, well, we have to figure out, how we're going to be doing this holiday from now on forever. But just give yourself permission to say, this is what it's going to be like this year, this day, and you can change it. It doesn't always have to be like that, and it doesn't mean you're always going to feel the same way that you do, that first time, that second time, whatever time it is. But first milestones are certainly tough. Number 11. You may feel a loss of identity. Identity is something that is kind of elusive sometimes and can even be hard to like put your finger on that it's something that's being impacted by grief. But certainly is part of that connection to other people and to grief. Grief can have us wondering who we are without that person we lost. It can change labels. So, like husband or wife or caregiver, brother, sister, etc. Uh, you may feel really lost without that. You may still identify in that way without that person. It can feel uncertain to know how to think about it, and it can feel like a piece of that is missing, a piece of you is missing. Um, you might be taking on roles of your loved one or tasked with having to kind of think through big life decisions that maybe you would have talked through before. And, um, all of these difficult questions that you start to ask yourself are a natural part of grief. Um, Over time, people do begin to rediscover themselves and discover new aspects of themselves in new ways. Different is different. It's not necessarily good or bad, but having that loss of identity is certainly not easy or comfortable, but it is part of grief. Sometimes you're going to feel stuck. And that is so hard when you feel stuck, but feeling stuck is common. Um, as I've mentioned, grief is not a straight path. So you may feel like you're making progress, and then all of a sudden, you have a good day and you wake up and you feel like you're back at the beginning. And it can feel maddening because you can't put a finger on why or what happened or what was different, but that's normal. When you have those moments, days, hours, time that you feel stuck, try and lean into your supports, whether that's friends, groups, counseling. They can all help you feel a little less alone. Uh, Bereavement support group or connecting with someone who's experienced a similar loss can be really validating in those moments to know like, oh, it's not that I'm kind of sliding back. This this is what other people feel too. It is part of that process. So, in those moments, don't forget about self-care. Think about even really small acts of kindness towards yourself, like exercise, going for walks, cooking food for yourself, whatever it looks like for you. These acts matter, but sometimes you are going to feel stuck. Number 13, creating rituals may help. Um, so we've talked a lot about with some psychoeducation around grief already, but let's talk about some more coping. Rituals can be a really helpful process in grief, and it can be a way for us to stay connected to our loved ones. So it's all about what, feels right for you and what is comfortable. There are five different kinds of, four different kinds of rituals that I like to think about, that we'll talk about here. The first one being rituals of continuity. So this is a type of ritual that helps connect you to that person that you lost and helps keep them as a part of your life. There's that ever existing bond between you and that person. And these types of rituals can help honor that. So maybe that's, making their favorite dessert on their birthday or going to a favorite restaurant of them, thinking of different things that kind of connect their wants, wishes, likes. Maybe it's embodying something that they were, a particular trait that you really admired of them, and trying to be a little bit like that. What a beautiful way to have of continuity. There's rituals of transition. So this type of ritual marks a change that's taken place in your grief, and can be a way to kind of symbolically let something go, let someone go, or let a little bit of that grief go by releasing your loved one. Maybe that's scattering their ashes somewhere that, is a special place for you. Maybe that's having a burial, or maybe that's cleaning out belongings, changing a home, changing around the furniture within a room that you used to spend time in together. All of these are kind of rituals of transition that can mark a change in your grief. Next is rituals of affirmation. So finding ways to thank your loved one for being caring and loving, uh, and acknowledging their help and support. So one way to do this might be to write a letter to a loved one. It might be talking to them. Sometimes people say they feel silly talking to their loved ones still, but no, that is very, very common, happens all the time, and can be really helpful. It can kind of be a way to still tell them, what's going on, or how much they mean to you. Sometimes that looks like praying to that person, different ways to kind of affirm what they've meant to you. And then there's the rituals of intensification. So a lot of these are kind of built around like traditional things that may happen at the time of death. It is really meant to intensify a connection amongst a group of people and reinforce that kind of common loss, that common bond you have with that person. So thinking about family gatherings, memorials, anywhere where friends and loved ones are coming together to share in their loss is that kind of ritual of intensification. So whether it's, lighting a candle, writing a letter, gathering with others, do what is meaningful to you. There's no right way to remember someone, but rituals may help. Number 14, you can't erase grief, but you may be able to rewire it. So grief doesn't disappear, but over time, we can learn to carry it a little differently. You may find new purpose or new passions, new ways to honor your loved one. For some people, they like to try and volunteer and find something that you can do for others. For others, it might be leaning into like creative expression, things like art or journaling. Maybe you take a new class or find either renewed purpose or passions in the things you've liked or new purpose and passions. But through all of this, meaning, having meaning is so important. And as we talked about, with loss of identity, it really is so helpful to be able to find different ways to make meaning amidst such uncertainty. So discover what recharges you and do it, whether it's walking or spending time with friends, learning something new, reading, traveling, all of these things, they're not about moving on. They're not about forgetting. They're about moving forward with your grief as a part of your new story. Number 15, coping with grief begins with self-care. Self-care means so many different things to different people, but here are some different things to consider when you're thinking about self-care. So, S, simplify and seek support. If you really don't know where to start, that's okay. Reach out to somewhere like Cancer Wellness Center, to a community center, to a faith place, wherever you feel comfortable getting support, and say, I don't know what I need, but I know I need help. And ask, just naming it is a good place to begin. E, establish a place of sanctuary. It's so hard there's so many things out of your control when you're grieving. Finding a place that brings you peace can be really helpful. So sometimes for people that is in their home, in a room, in a place where you feel connection. Maybe it's at a graveside or at a specific park or place you like to be together. Maybe your sanctuary is somewhere that has nothing to do with the person you lost. It is a place where you can be you. Maybe it's a music room or a place you totally separate, but wherever it is in your home, your world that brings you peace, kind of name that. L, let go of what you can't control and embrace hope. Now, it is really hard to hear the word hope when you are grieving. And I know that not everyone is in a place to think about that, and that is okay. But when you do have hope, when you do have moments where things change just a bit, when you notice that you could do a little bit more than you could before, where the pain isn't as raw as it might have been in those moments, try to lean into that and recognize those changes and know that just as we don't always know the bad things that will happen to us in life, we don't know the good either. We don't know that people will meet the happiness that may lie ahead. It's not trying to say that everything's okay. It's just saying that we don't know and there can still be hope. F, feel your feelings. At the same time that it can be helpful to have hope that it won't always be as hard as it is right now, it is also important to know that right now it is still hard. And sometimes it can be really important to acknowledge those fears, those anxieties, that sadness, which is so, it's that horrible saying that no one wants to hear, that sometimes the uh, only way is through, right? You can't just kind of jump over it. You can't just ignore it. You have to go through it and feel your feelings. Um, See, challenge yourself, celebrate with play and humor. We talked about laughing and that those benefits. But I do really want to recognize that trying to be playful or have enjoyment, whatever that looks like for you in your life, can feel really challenging. And even the idea of it, of finding motivation to do something that you once loved or think you might like, it is really difficult, especially when right now, when you're grieving, it may not feel happy or like play, but know that as you continue to do things, what feels like kind of going through the motions can start to feel good again. And that is part of that process. So try to challenge yourself to go through those processes and allow yourself that laugh or that happiness or whatever kind of sliver of joy there is when those moments arrive. A, ask for help and acknowledge reality. Um, we talked about kind of starting off with seeking support, but this can be with friends and family too. Um, Being able to say things are different now and it's not fair and you didn't ask for it. But this is where things are at, and letting other people know that however you're feeling, however you're doing, that thought to the mask, you're maybe showing a little bit more of that internal mask to people on the outside who you feel safe with, who you can trust, can be helpful too. Or rest, relax, reset. Um, a lot of times, people kind of want to go, go, go because getting out there feels like the only way to be distracted, and that can certainly be helpful. It can be helpful to do things, and it is important to know that you will be tired, and you got to take care of your body, you got to take care of your mind, and it's okay to let yourself have those days where you don't get out of bed. Obviously, it's all within moderation, right? You don't want to go one way or the other. It's important to have both. Um, and so kind of along with that, exercise and eat well. When I say this, please know I am taking this with a grain of salt. That means that grieving is a time where it can be really, really, really difficult to do either of those things. But any moment where you feel up for moving your body, for getting out and even just taking a walk around the block, maybe cooking a meal for yourself can be a way to nourish yourself and not just, be good for you physically, but mentally and emotionally well. So I'm not talking about, overhauling anything here, or getting down on yourself when you can't do those things. But in the moment where it's possible, try and lean into some of these different aspects of self-care. So, as we are kind of coming to an end today, I know for anyone who has been a part of one of my groups or any of my talks, you have seen this before. But I always like to kind of talk about this image here. People tend to believe that, grief shrinks over time. But if you look at the top line and imagine, you are the jar and the grief is the ball, and, people think that over time that grief gets smaller and smaller and smaller. That can be really misleading. What I like to think, and what I think this kind of shows, what really happens is that we're here growing around our grief. The ball, stays the same size, but you, the jar, get bigger Just like the image, we change, we learn to create more space for other things in our life in addition to the grief as we take it with us. So I want to close today with a quote from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. The reality is that you will grieve forever. You will not get over the loss of a loved one. You'll learn to live with it. You will heal, you will rebuild yourself around the loss that you've suffered, and you will be whole again, but you won't be the same. Nor should you be the same, nor would you want to. Grief changes us. Just like any other huge thing in our life, we will be different, but different isn't better or worse. It's just different. So I want to thank you all for coming today. I hope, as I mentioned, you found this helpful or validating, maybe even learned something new, hopefully, and appreciate you all coming. Thanks so much.